Welcome, everybody. I'm Marc David, founder of the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. Here we are in the Psychology of Eating podcast, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Autumn Smith today. Welcome, Autumn.
Thank you, Mark. Like I was just telling you, you've been a mentor to me, and so I'm absolutely honored to be here.
Well, I consider us colleagues now, so what a good place to be. And let me just brag on you for a minute or so, and then we can jump in. So Autumn Smith is an eating psychology coach, and she's the co-founder of two amazing companies, Paleovalley and Wildpastures. You know, Autumn has moved through her own intense digestive issues, crippling anxiety that impacted her for a good chunk of her life, and turned to whole foods at some point. And during her journey, cleaned up her diet. In just 30 days, her IBS was cured. She reclaimed her inner self and happiness. And since then, she's dedicated her life to helping others in this realm. So in 2013, she and her husband, who I know, Chaz, they launched Paleovalley. And that's just a wonderful company dedicated to high quality food and supplement products. And then just a few years ago, they launched Wildpastures, and that's a regenerative meat delivery service that sends 100% grass-fed pasture-raised meat directly to your doorstep. So, you know, Autumn, as a graduate of our training here at the Institute and as a businesswoman, I've just had the pleasure of following your career and your success, your mission. You know, I'm super impressed. And I just love to talk to you today about a bunch of things. We'll cover diet and mental health. We'll talk about your companies. There's a lot to say here, but what else do you want to share with us about your personal journey that kind of factors into kind of how you've gotten to where you are today and the things that you're doing?
Yeah, I think it just all began when I was young. Like you said, I had some debilitating digestive issues even before I hit high school. Maybe I was 12 and the doctors didn't know what to do with me at that time. I had irritable bowel syndrome, or so they said, and I should just take Beano. And now we know that there is this comorbidity between, you know, digestive issues and mental health issues. At that time, we didn't really know this. And so as it remained unaddressed, it just snowballed into mental health stuff, anxiety, depression. I had an eating disorder. I was a ballerina. I was just kind of a mess in high school. So much so that my parents kicked me out of my house before I graduated. And so that was a nice little wake up call. It was actually a very loving thing, I think, that they did in some ways. And fortunately, I had a love of learning, and I really still wanted to be a dancer. And so I kind of pulled myself up from my bootstraps, finished college, moved to Los Angeles, and just kind of got by. I wasn't thriving. I was just managing. But it wasn't until I met my husband and he saw how I was literally suffering in silence and putting on a smile, but not feeling good and definitely not well and looking pregnant after meals. He just challenged me to change our diet. He said he'd been reading online and he knew the doctors in LA couldn't help me either. And so we changed our diet, and in 30 days, my digestive issues were completely gone, which was wild to me. Wow. It was such a remarkable transformation. I was actually a fitness trainer for Tracy Anderson. I had a dream job. I mean, it was wonderful. But that change was so powerful that I quit that job, went back to school to kind of understand what I had just experienced, because not only did my digestive issues get better, my mental health over the next year, I was a new person. I used to have these ups and downs and, you know, anxiety and then depression, and I was all over the place. But my diet and caffeine, when I eliminated it, it stabilized me so much that I wanted to give that back to other people. We got into physical products because I didn't think people had the tools to make this a realistic lifestyle, because I actually went on a world tour right after I had changed my diet. And I found it very difficult to maintain when you're traveling, when you're on the go, and unless you had stuff. So that's why we came back, and literally right after I finished that world tour in 2012, came back and decided we're going to go into physical products and make this a realistic lifestyle for other people.
So these days, what's your main activities given everything that's going on? I know you're a mom, you've got businesses. Oh. What are you doing?
Do you mean all day long? Like my daily, or like what strategies am I using?
Yeah. What does your work life look like? Where are your energies going?
Yeah. So basically, I've created this remarkable team. And so my focus is on research. I'm getting my doctorate right now, and I just kind of stay abreast of what is the research saying, what's really beneficial, what's going on with microbiome research and food quality. And then I educate people through podcasts and through my own podcasts and through giving talks and stuff. So and ads, I do a lot of the ads. And so I do a lot of the outreach and a lot of the education and a lot of the research and even some of the ad content, some of our, the content on our website, and just making sure everything is accurate and well researched. That's kind of what I do for the company. But then as a mother, I try and have a really nice balance. So my little guy's in first grade. So I spend the morning with him, and we do what we do. We get out on our trampoline in the morning, and then at nighttime, we have family time, and like he's showing some signs of having mental health struggles like I did at his age. And I'm just saying it is so powerful for me to feel like I know how to help, not only from a psychological perspective because of your training. And then I also have a bachelor's in psych, but also from this biological perspective too. But when it comes to my companies, research, outreach, and kind of just representing the company is what I do most days.
Good for you. So talking about diet and mental health, what's some of the things that you find most important that you like to talk about in terms of the link between those?
Yeah, just that there is one that we used to think, mental health is a brain-based disorder, and research is coming out showing that it's very much connected to our physical health as well. And that there are multiple ways that they interact. The brain and the gut actually start from the same cell in the embryo, and then they remain connected through the vagus nerve. And so when our gut isn't doing well, our brain isn't doing well. We always used to think it was just the brain that could influence the gut, but basically, no one really understands the biological underpinnings of mental health issues like depression and anxiety, like we'd like to think they do, right? There are multiple theories about what's happening, and diet affects it through an immunological pathways, epigenetic pathways, through our microbiome. Our nutrients literally become our neurotransmitters, our enzymes, our brain receptors. And so we are literally creating the structure of our brain when we're choosing what to eat. So there's always 3 steps that I took when I was going through this process that I think made a really remarkable transformation in my health, in my mental health specifically. And so I can go through those if you want to, but
let's talk about them.
Yeah. Okay. So it was interesting. Like I said before, I switched my diet, right, to a primarily whole foods diet, and just eliminating the processed foods was very, very powerful. Research now, just coming out since 2010, is showing that, in women who eat processed foods a lot have a 50% increased risk of depression and things like that. And that it can even affect kids. So I didn't understand that at the time, but if we can reduce inflammation, I think that's one of the main things. We know depression specifically and inflammation are linked, and we know diet can be a major source of inflammation for a lot of people. Today, we're eating 60% hyperpalatable foods. Things like gluten and dairy can be problematic for certain people. Alcohol, of course, vegetable oils. So getting that inflammation under control in your diet, whatever that means for you, because it will be different for everyone, is my first step. And knowing that diet is a powerful way to influence inflammation, because most of our gut or our immune system is in our gut, but it's not the only way. They, of course, like dental health, inactivity. There are other contributors, of course, your toxic, your chemical exposure, but diet's very powerful because we're eating 3 times a day. And the second one is that balanced blood sugar. This was my main problem. So I switched to paleo, and it was still that I was eating a lot of dried fruit, drinking a lot of juice, things like that. And I was still having a lot of caffeine and going up and down on this roller coaster all day long. And when I learned how to stabilize my blood sugar, I now actually wear a CGM from time to time, which is a continuous glucose monitor, because we know that stabilizing blood sugar looks different for everyone. And so the best way to figure out which foods were for you is to do that. But I think we've all had the experience where we are eating foods that might raise our blood sugar, and then all of a sudden we crash a few hours later and we feel anxious, irritable, hangry. And we experience those as, anxiety or even depression at times, but they're what I like to call fake feelings. They're biologically driven feelings. And so I think it's just important to separate. You can have feelings related to circumstance, but you can also have feelings, anxiety, restlessness, agitation, all related to your blood sugar. And they've done research in diabetics to show that. So step 2 is just stabilizing the blood sugar. And then step number 3 is making sure that your nutrient bases are covered. Now, Dr. Felice Jacka is one of the women doing most of the research, and she finds that not only is processed foods, sugar, they increase your likelihood of depression and anxiety, but not having enough of the good stuff too. So when you're not eating a very nutrient dense diet, and of course, that looks very different depending on what dietary philosophy you're using. But I think most people are surprised when I work with them and make them do this exercise where we fill out their diet for a week in Chronometer, which is this software that'll tell you which micronutrients you're missing, and just start there. Because most of us aren't consuming as many nutrients as we'd like to think we are. And our food is more nutrient depleted than it used to be. But that doesn't mean it needs to be all doom and gloom. There's simple foods that you can add to significantly increase your nutrient density. But those are the first 3 steps I take, just understanding the link between inflammation and depression and mental health issues, and then stabilizing your blood sugar, whatever that looks like for you. And then last is just making sure that your nutrient bases are covered. B12 and iron, omega-3 fatty acids are some of the most powerful. Folate. I mean, there's a few. My son actually had low iron, which was really surprising. And I think it was contributing to his irritability. If we don't have enough iron, we don't have neurotransmitter synthesis isn't happening as it should. We're not getting as much oxygen to our brain. And so, I think it's important because when I was young, we jumped to antidepressants and they didn't work for me. And I want to see a world where all of these baseline, dietary and lifestyle factors are taken into consideration first.
First of all, Autumn, such a beautiful summary of really how to be a healthy human being. I was thinking as you were talking about number 2, blood sugar regulation, how really for so many decades, I'll talk about the United States because that's what I know best. For so many decades in this country, we have this collective flow where, breakfast for so many people is often a high, poor quality carbohydrate breakfast, fill in the blank, bagel, muffin, donut, and caffeine, coffee. And we're oftentimes on a blood sugar dysregulation roller coaster from a pretty young age. People are drinking coffee when they're in junior high school these days. And, it's instead of making those substances bad, I like to think of, something like sugar and caffeine. And I know you're not making those bad, but a lot of people go, oh my God, those are bad. I can't do them. Instead of making them bad, let's just look at them as powerful substances. They're powerful. And if something's powerful, you just respect it a little bit more and you look to use it wisely. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, until they get educated or do the experiments that you've done in your own life, you basically did some amazing nutritional experiments. Yeah. And they worked for you.
Yes. And I do think there are certain people who are more susceptible to this than others. I found that I have 2 genes for Alzheimer's, which means I am better adapted to a pre-agricultural diet than other people. So I kind of suffer more. So I'm not saying that it's true for everyone. And I love your focus on curiosity, because as I was going along this, it's important that you never shame yourself. Like you said, there's no morality in food, no good, no bad. Just how is this particular food impacting me personally? And for some people with depression, caffeine can be a great tool, right? But for people with anxiety, which was more my jam at the time, it overstimulated me and it made me crash hard. So, and even when it comes to sugar, some people eat it and feel fine and they can do it in moderation. We actually do what's called Fun Food Friday for my little guy. Is we don't have a lot of sugar in the house, but I don't want him to have like a sugar-free life. So we let him choose whatever he wants on Friday. We go out, we make it an event, and it's a thing. Notice my mental health specifically is impacted when I eat too much sugar, but I know other people I work with, that isn't true. And if they just keep their blood sugar balanced, they can manage. So yeah, like you said, highly personal, no good or bad, and just a posture of creativity or curiosity is how I hope what I hope you take away from it.
Yes. I was also thinking when you were talking about, micronutrition, nutrient-dense food, which has been such a missing in our culture for a long time. And I know that that's, a big piece of the Paleovalley company. It's you promote nutrient-dense foods, which doesn't always register for people when they first hear that, because we're just accustomed to the foods that we grew up with. And, you read any label, and every label on every food that you buy in a supermarket, has all this information that I don't even know if anybody's reading labels. Literally, I don't. And it looks like, oh, great. Well, here's all the vitamins and minerals in it. But, even that I find is oftentimes inadequate to really describe the actual value of a food. Your thought?
100%. Yeah, I was just going to say that. Do you know Dr. Fred Provenza?
No.
I love this man. So he is big in regenerative agriculture, and he's figuring out, he's looking at the intersection between agriculture and meat quality. And what he notes is that we track about 13 nutrients on a food label in USDA databases, about 150 nutrients, but there are tens of thousands of nutrients that are impacting human health every single day. And like you said, it is too myopic to think, okay, well, I got my calcium, I got my magnesium, I got this iron. There's so much more to food and the synergy within it. And we don't even know all about it yet. But I do think that is a very huge missing part of the conversation around health these days, because we are simply not often eating the most nutrient dense foods. And we can talk about those. Columbia University did a study recently about the most mental health protective nutrients and foods. And it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah. So what they found is in terms, they did plant and then also animal foods. And the most mental health protective nutrients are iron, folate, omega-3s, magnesium, potassium, thiamine, B1. But the foods were very interesting. So greens, leafy greens are very mental health protective. They're one of the best nutrients for your brain. They've actually done scans to show that people who eat 2 servings of leafy greens a day had brains that looked 10 years younger than those who didn't. So in leafy greens, they're available. You can do it. I do like a little green shake every day. It's just part of my routine because I've noticed they impact me so beneficially. And then it's rainbow colored, just eating from the rainbow, right? It's those phytochemicals because they're working on our microbiota and they often contain fiber. Both of these things are improving our microbiome health, which we know is really impacts mental health in a pretty profound way. And then when it comes to animal products, organ meats were one of the top mental health protective foods, and no one's really eating them. We can talk about how you can do it without gagging, because I actually really benefited from them, but I had a huge resistance to incorporating them into my diet because of the cultural thing. So organ meats like poultry, giblets, liver, but then also seafood. So shellfish, crab, all of the shrimp, oysters, all of those. So seafood, organ meats, colorful veggies, and leafy greens were the most mental health protective foods. But I also want to add, they didn't talk about it, but fermented foods also have had a lot of research around them recently. Not only, I think there was a study in college kids where they looked at social anxiety, and people who ate yogurt had less social anxiety. But more recently, there was a really cool study out of Stanford where they looked at if people ate fermented foods versus if they ate more fiber, what would happen, what would be a more beneficial outcome in terms of inflammation. They actually found that fermented foods were more beneficial in terms of creating microbiome diversity and also reducing inflammatory markers. And given the link between depression and inflammation, I just think it's really important to add fermented foods into the mix.
So true. And it's, as you're speaking, what I keep hearing in the background is that there's a wisdom that's been passed down to us from the older generations, because My grandparents ate fermented foods. They ate organ meats. They were eating fresh fish. They were eating high quality, meats. They weren't calling it organic or farm raised, but that's what it was when they were growing up.
Yeah.
And we've kind of lost that. Yes. And it's interesting because now science is proving what I think the wisdom of the ages has already taught us, which is, hey, here's some of the foods to focus on.
Yeah, and it seems so simple, right? Whole foods are healing, fermented foods, organ meats. But I do remember when I made my dietary transition, I was very afraid if I didn't eat bread every day, what would happen? Or if I didn't eat processed carbohydrates, what would happen? But what we have to remember is we're eating basically 12 foods in the standard American diet over and over and over and over. And so diversifying, it doesn't even mean you can never eat those foods again. Adding. I like to add. I think you taught me that. Just make a goal to have 2 servings of leafy greens. Make a goal to have 5 servings of fruit and vegetables a day. Make a goal to add organ meats, pill form or otherwise, and to have seafood a few times a week. You can make huge inroads, but you're right. We need to go back to what we were doing before the 20th century because we kind of got off course there and our health is suffering as a result.
I also think how, in addition to the healthy foods, I was surprised when I started doing research way back when on the stress response and nutrient absorption. And one of the most common factors in malabsorption of nutrients is stress. And we can literally measure, particularly minerals that are lost in the urine and lost in sweat when we're under stress. And it's pretty profound. So there's this piece about eating the right foods. And there's also this piece about, being in the optimum state to receive, digest, and assimilate those good foods.
Marc, I'm telling you, it's one of the most profound experiences the people I work with have is after we cover those 3 bases, actually do this before we cover those, is your little experiment. Are you a fast, slow, moderate paced eater? How can we change that? And then I do share the dichotomous listening task study that you talked about, how nutrient absorption completely shut down when we were simply multitasking or just not paying attention. So you are 100% correct. And I think it's such a beautiful gateway practice too, because I think of a lot of our mental health struggles come from, not being in the present, not being mindful. And so I think, everybody can benefit from eating more slowly, being more mindful, reducing stress. But I think specifically this population benefits too.
Oh, big time. So when you both started the Paleovalley company, what were you thinking?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Here's what we were thinking. Basically, I was in that dream job, Tracy Anderson, but I was working out maybe 6 hours a day. It was very taxing, 6 days a week. I was traveling around the world and we had just gotten married. And so we thought, what can I do that I'm passionate about? I specifically remember the day he sat me down in a coffee shop in Pasadena and said, what would you want to do if you woke up every morning? What would make you happy? And that is the day I found your program, The Psychology of Eating. And I just knew it was. I remember exactly where I was. And so I knew that I wanted to teach people about the transformation I had just had. But I also found out when I was on that tour that it was the physical product piece that I missed because I'm not great in the kitchen and I didn't know how to help the people I wanted to work with. I wanted to be able to give them tools. And so we were thinking, okay, well, we've never been food manufacturers, but we're young and naive and we're pretty driven people. So we're going to start with the beef stick because my fitness training background taught me about the importance of protein. Then there's some really interesting research around red meat and mental health that it seems to be protective. And it was always a food I wasn't particularly drawn to. But yeah, so I thought I'm going to just combine that and we're going to call some manufacturers and see what we can do and produce something that's, doesn't have a lot of additives and is really great quality and supports the planet. And so that was our goal. We just wanted to share the health transformation. And I guess I also shared my lifestyle or this paleo lifestyle with 200 of my friends before I really quit my other job to see if this was in fact something that was going to help a lot of people. And when the majority of them said, no, this was very profound and healing and helped a lot, then I thought, okay, this is something we need to share.
I just think it's so cool how, for so many of us in the health space, our work in the world and, subsequent success is driven by our own personal need and our own personal challenges. Mm-hmm. And that place in us, I remember when I made the promise to myself when I was very young, maybe 12, 13, I was thinking to myself, if I can heal my health issues, I will gladly help other human beings.
Yeah.
And it was sort of my bargain with the universe, just to show me how to do this. And I just don't want to be selfish about it because I know there's I suffered from asthma, I suffered from digestive issues, mood issues. And I, went from doctor to doctor and, took matters into my own hands and changed my diet at a young age. And, it's magic when you tweak what you eat and notice a transformation. There's just a magic to the human body and a magic to biology that's just undeniable. And it's exciting.
And it's empowering. I think that was the big piece for me was I always felt like, okay, well, something's wrong with me. I'm just kind of less than. I seem to struggle more than everyone else. And I just was looking for someone to turn it all around in a pill, in a, procedure, whatever. But the minute I knew that I could play a part in my healing, it was pretty exciting. And it ignited something in me that thought, wow, I can be powerful. And what else can I do with this power now that I'm not simply managing and trying to feel good enough to get by?
Mm-hmm. Hey, here's another fun fact in our trajectory together. You said you remembered the time when you were sitting with Chaz and, had that conversation and found our training. I was going to a business event in Utah and I'm waiting at the airport for a shuttle to pick me up. And there's one other person there to take the shuttle, and it's Chaz. And I didn't know that you and he were connected. And so we had, a half hour to sit there and shoot the breeze. And, and I remember after speaking to him for a couple of minutes, I thought, wow, I really like this guy. And he pulled out a couple of meat sticks, showed me what he was creating and gave them to me. And I remember the first time I had them later on that day, I thought, damn, somebody's finally created a good tasting meat stick. That's healthy for you. I'm like, oh, wow, you actually did it. So I was super impressed from that point. Okay, so you guys, that was your first product. And what else did you build out from there?
Yeah, it kind of just followed our health trajectory, right? Beef sticks came first. We made them fermented because we knew about the benefit of fermented foods and how we could avoid all these weird additives. And then we did organ meats because I got pregnant shortly thereafter and I started to feel really tired and I started to delve into, what kind of nutrients does this growing baby need? And I found, I think it was Matthew Lalonde's work that organ meats were the most nutrient dense foods in the world. And like we just talked about, some mental health protective foods too. So Chaz tried to make me organs over and over and just like sneak tripe into some hamburger. And it just didn't work for me. And so we decided to just encapsulate organ meats, heart, liver, and kidney from grass-fed animals so that you could still get that increased stamina and increased nutrient density in your diet, even for people who weren't accustomed to consuming them like other cultures. And we also created this tonic. We wanted to live till 110 together. That was kind of a goal we made when we got married. And we wanted to figure out how to support digestion, reduce inflammation daily. And our apple cider vinegar complex came out of that with turmeric and ginger and cinnamon and all of these blood sugar and inflammation supportive nutrients. And then we just kept going. We got superfood bars because people wanted something a little sweeter. And I wanted people to find a way to get collagen into their diet in a really delicious, simple way. And then Neuro Effect is another product that we do based on brain health, and we can get into it, but lion's mane, mushroom specifically, has been shown to reverse mild cognitive impairment, also has antidepressant and BDNF stimulating properties. And we're just growing and growing. We have a bone broth protein. We have a super greens powder without cereal grasses and just turmeric complex. There's actually really cool research around turmeric or curcumin specifically, showing that it can be as effective as Prozac for depression. But then also when you combine them, so Prozac helped 65% of the time, curcumin helped 63% of the time, and then the combination was 78% of the time. So I just found that fascinating. So we just kind of go along my life, and I think what could help people, and what products are people not doing in a way that I would like them done.
Yes. I that's what I appreciate about you guys. That's what I appreciate about Paleovalley is, I'm a fanatic around ingredients, and I know you are too. I'm a fanatic around sourcing. And, something like your mushroom product, mushrooms are really big now. It's really started to explode. And what really irks me is that a significant amount of the mushroom products that are out there that you can buy in a good health food store or buy online, they're a lot of times they're exclusively mycelium. They're kind of the root system of the mushroom. And in every traditional use of mushroom that you can find across the globe, they're always using the fruiting body. Mm-hmm. That's the part that you use. And in order to use fruiting bodies in a mushroom supplement, especially if you have multiple mushrooms, it's not so easy all the time to source fruiting bodies, and it's more expensive.
Absolutely more expensive. And we almost released a product without understanding that, but we got approached by some people through this wonderful company who only do not only fruiting bodies, but they standardize. So basically a lot of the really powerful benefits of mushrooms are thought to be attributable to beta-glucans, right? Yeah. They are polysaccharides. But there's also something called alpha-glucans, and you find those in grain, in mycelium, when they're growing them and not separating them. So a lot of companies will claim high levels of polysaccharides, but they could be and are usually talking about alpha-glucans rather than the beta-glucans, the really powerful compounds. So this company actually standardizes for the really powerful beta-glucans. But testing's shown some of the products out there up to 50% grain. And I know it's just one thing I don't think most Americans need more of, but also it's just watering down the impact. You can actually do this test at home. It's called the iodine test. If you have a mushroom product, have you done this?
Yes.
Yeah. It can turn purple if you have a lot of grains in your mushroom. But yeah, our mushroom product is standardized for beta-glucans, and it's from the fruiting body. And that's exactly why we made it.
Yeah. And it's, this is the world we live in right now, where we have access to so much information. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of, I don't know how to say this. There's a lot of Me Too products out there. Like people just want to jump on the bandwagon. Oh, paleo products are selling, so let's start a paleo company and, have poor quality products kind of thing. So it's, if you look for the good guys, if you look for the high quality products, you could eventually find them. So I'm always appreciating you all for that. Talk to me about Wild Pastures.
Well, this is fun. And I just wanted to say on that note, we are definitely sticklers for quality, but we're also as passionate about making everything accessible. So we work so hard to keep our costs down, despite the fact that our quality is always high. But Wild Pastures came about when Maverick was born. He's our little 6-year-old. And we realized from all these relationships with farmers through the beef sticks, they were telling us that, we only had 60 years of topsoil left, and that certain practices were actually helping to heal the planet, restore environmental health, but that a lot of farmers weren't using them, even when they said they were grass-fed or, because there's not a lot of regulation around that term. And so we got really excited about some farmers we had met who were doing things regeneratively, meaning not only sustainable practices, but are we making the environment better in terms of soil quality and biodiversity and water holding capacity? And so because we had these relationships with the farmers, we got to talk to them and say like, okay, well, you guys need to really get out there. And they kept telling us, well, we don't want to be marketers. we're farmers. Like we can't really help people. And so with that, we decided to become the middleman, because every client I worked with, I always said, pasture-raised regenerative meats are great, but then they tell me I can't find them or they're too expensive. So we wanted to bring a really cost-effective way to support regenerative agriculture and make it easy for people. So it's a meat delivery service. It's 100% sourced from regenerative farms, pasture pork, chicken, wild fish, of course, wild caught fish. And then we just deliver it to people's doors at wholesale prices, essentially. And we recently became nationwide, which is pretty exciting. So I'm really excited to say that no one has to feel that high quality meat is elitist anymore, because we're really making it as accessible as possible.
What an undertaking. I mean, just hearing that makes my brain explode, because I know just running a school that there's got to be at least 1 million details.
Oh, you can't even believe it. And there's, we have really high standards, and we want to make sure that the people are literally measurably kind of improving the environment. So there are very few people we've found who are doing that well at scale. And even our first venture, we bought some chicken and it was regenerative, but then they went out of business. There's been 1 million stumbling blocks, and the barrier to entry, like you're saying, is huge, but we've got a great team and we're really committed to the mission. So we are persevering, but you're right. It's a very challenging business.
Yeah. I want to say something about cost and money when it comes to health food products, healthy eating, healthy food, healthy supplements. I think it is true that as you move up the food chain in terms of quality, things often, not always, but often get more expensive. If you want organic, if you want farm-raised, pasture-raised, nutrient-dense, high quality, you're often paying more money. And that's the complaint that a lot of people have. And, to me, what I like to say is, for those people that can afford it, think of it as the real health insurance.
Yes.
The real health insurance is what you and I do every day for our health. And one of the things I do every day is I'm eating. And I would rather put extra money into what I'm putting into my body to make sure it's got the least amount of toxins and the most amount of, God-given substances that were created by nature. That to me is health insurance. That's the best I can do sometimes.
Yeah. And that's what Americans have reversed. A lot of other countries spend more on food, less on healthcare, and we spend way more on healthcare and less on food. And like you said, I think we can balance that out by finding companies who are doing really high quality food for, not an arm and a leg necessarily.
Yeah. So other health practices, or a health practice in your life that you do that for you personally, you find, gosh, I really like this. This is so good for me. It could be a personal practice, a health practice.
I'm going to talk about 2 of them that are just kind of non-negotiables. And the first is movement. I have to move. I dance daily. When I don't, my mood definitely suffers. That's kind of my weak link, is my mood. So exercise. And then also intermittent fasting for me, for whatever reason, I don't know. It seems to be very powerful. I don't do it every day, but I do find my mood improves significantly when I do a fast every once in a while. And I think that I just have a system that needs a little more time. And so I found that fasting is very beneficial for me too.
Mm-hmm. I like that comment. I find my system needs a little more time. It's for me, what I like about the comment, it's just you attending to your body and your own uniqueness, because there's so many practices out there that are going to work for you personally or not work for you personally. And we really don't know until we experiment. And at the end of the day, even though we go to our good practitioners, and I want to have a good doctor, and I want to have good, health advisors. And at the end of the day, like, who knows your body better than you?
Yeah. And on that note, I've done a lot of testing. I think the end of the road is to be in touch with your intuition and to kind of get that feedback. But I had to start with testing my blood sugar. I test my HRV, and just kind of putting metrics on it in the beginning really helped me to understand that feedback in a more profound way. So it's nice that I have that understanding now, but I just want everyone to know it took practice and time and just having the right metrics, I think.
Okay, another question, and this is a mom question. A practice in terms of helping your child be a healthy human being, a practice or two that you find useful, effective, feels good for you as a mom, and looks like it's working.
Ooh, that is a great question for my Maverick. The first thing, one of the best ways, he's a bit of a moody one. I love that about him, but he's more of a serious. And so in the morning, we get out, we get bright light, and we go on the trampoline. We have 15 minutes of trampoline time every single morning. And I find that it is really powerful for him. Probably the same way it is for me: movement, light exposure, all of that. The second one would probably be on a more psychological level. I'm beginning to teach him, because he's almost 7 and sometimes he gets a bit anxious, that just because we think something doesn't make it true. And I'm really teaching him to kind of counter and question all of the narratives and all of the thoughts that he is having, and kind of choosing which ones to focus on and which ones might be counterproductive. And so that most recently has been very helpful for him.
Oh, I just so love that. I really love that. And let me tell you why I love that. One of the great things we could do as parents is teach our kids good, healthy habits. These are the foods that we eat for health. These are the foods that we only have on Fun Friday, kind of a thing. And we exercise because it's good. We move because it's good. We get sun because it's good. So those habits, I think, are more common ones that a health conscious parent would teach a child. But when did I ever learn as a child, here's how you operate the tool called your mind? We didn't get that. You and I never got that. And chances are you might not have learned it till you were an adult. I mean, even when I studied psychology in college, I didn't learn anything. A lot of it was abnormal psychology.
And theory. Yeah.
Yes. And I had to turn to personal growth books at a younger age to learn about my mind and why it tortures me sometimes. I had to turn to yoga or meditation and learn about, okay, so this mind is kind of like a tool. And how do I sharpen my skills so the tool works for me? So anyway, that's why I love that, because we usually don't get that training as young people.
I know. And that was my whole goal when I was becoming a mother, was I just want to give him the tools that I didn't have when I was really young, so that he can understand himself. And just that, like I said, the thoughts aren't always facts and they can work for us and we get to choose. And so I'm glad that you appreciate that, because it's been one of my goals to just give him a tool set and a skill set that would help him build resilience for the rest of his life.
Have you noticed the impact of these conversations on him? How does it land for him?
It's funny. Yeah, we just had one this morning. I can't remember. I think he was upset. He said he thinks that everyone in his class was hating him or something like that. And we just did an exercise. And I had just read the book, Freeing Your Child from Anxiety, which has been really impactful for me. And I just said, now, if everything you thought were true, could you think about being a professional baseball player? And would that be true? And he just stopped and said, wow. No. And he was just saying, so sometimes I'll think something and it's not true. And I said, that's right. And so we kind of just went through a few more examples, but this morning his eyes really perked up to know that just because his teacher was firm with him doesn't mean she hates him, even though his mind might have taken it there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it really does help. He had a much more calm demeanor and it kind of seemed to make sense to him. And then we went about and did our trampoline time. And yeah, it was a total 180 in terms of his mood before and after the conversation.
Good for you. Good for him.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about Mav.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So Autumn, tell us what we need to know about how to kind of plug into your world, how to plug into Paleovalley, Wild Pastures. We will definitely provide links in the show notes for those two companies. Anything else that you want to let us know about?
Ooh, no, I think that's good. Except for we do, if you're in the Boulder, Denver area, we also started a burger restaurant called Wild Pastures Burger Company. Do you know about that?
Do I know about it? I just went there for the second time, and the first time I was there, it dawned on me like, oh, this is your place. I didn't realize it was open yet because you had mentioned it to me, and oh, so good. Like, congratulations. You guys nailed it. My partner, Christina, she just went gaga over the milkshakes.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Yeah. So that was another goal. We Paleovalley brings the products and the stuff, and Wild Pastures brings the meat, but also we wanted to meet most Americans where they are with fast food and make that healthy. And so we just did regenerative farms, of course, grass-fed and finished beef, and then organic produce and no sugar milkshakes. And all the French fries and stuff, they're cooked in tallow, which is a far more stable cooking fat than vegetable oil. So we made it as healthy as possible. And yeah, you can find that down on Pearl Street in Boulder if you're in the area. But other than that, you can always reach out to me too, Autumn at Paleovalley, and with any compliment or comments, feedback, anything, I'm an open book.
Autumn, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been amazing. It's been wonderful. Always is.
Yeah. Thank you for this, Mark. Like I said, you're a mentor, a colleague, and a lot of this career and what we're doing is part of your responsibility. So thanks.
Well, I'm lucky. Thank you. I'm honored. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Take care, and more to come.
Hey, friends, we're so happy that you've joined us for another episode of The Psychology of Eating with Marc David. Are you loving these episodes? Then simply subscribe and you'll never miss an episode again. We'd also love it if you'd leave us a comment below so we can hear more about your own journey with food and body. And if you're curious about what we offer at the Institute for the Psychology of Eating, including our internationally acclaimed coach certification training that's rooted in dynamic eating psychology and mind-body nutrition, please head on over to our website, psychologyofeating.com. Until next time, take care, and remember, having the body you want starts with loving the body you have.